And it's the final day of AFSIC 2023. Focus this year is on making finance work for Africa's future. FSD Africa is a big part of this year's event. Let's talk to Mary Njuguna, Principal Specialist, Capital Markets, FSD Africa, joining me right there from London. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ladi. Thanks for having me.
Right, so it's day two, final day of AFSIC. What are the challenges you've seen with respect to unlocking financing for Africa?
Thanks, Ladi. Allow me first to introduce FSD Africa. So we are a specialist development agency. We are funded by UK Aid, and we exist, just as you said, to make finance work for Africa's sustainable futures. We work across three broad thematic areas. One is capital markets, risk and resilience or insurance sector, and also leveraging on the digital innovations on the continent. And through these three avenues, being able to support development of sustainable growth within the region. So just directly in response to your question, allow me first to say that for us, we see opportunities and risks, or opportunities and challenges as the same side of the coin. And so if I can mention some of the challenges, just looking at the broader issues, the macroeconomic factors, some of the challenges are high public debt that is increasingly unsustainable because of the global economic headwinds with the inflationary pressure, high interest rate environment, and currency volatility. That makes it more expensive to raise capital. But if we move further down and look at the markets themselves, we know that different markets are at different stages of development. Some markets are only starting to crawl, others are starting to walk, others are starting to run. And therefore, we see different kinds of challenges. One is the enabling environment. In some markets, the policy and regulatory environment is not as robust as others. And we know that it's important to have a very strong regulatory environment to provide legal certainty, investor protection. Another thing is that I look at capital, or the flow of capital, like the flow of a river. It has to flow to be able to water certain parts of the real economy to enable them to grow and to flourish. And so if it doesn't flow properly, maybe because of capital controls or other hindrances in, for example, the exchange of securities between buyers and sellers on an exchange, then that makes it difficult for capital to flow. The other thing is the availability of pools of capital. And when we are talking about pools of capital, we're talking about institutional capital, pension funds, banks. How deep are their pools of capital so that they can be available when buyers want to buy or sell? And also the depth of expertise of market intermediaries. That's very important because market intermediaries have the role to create innovative solutions and to interface between buyers and sellers of capital.
All right, talk to me about countries now in Africa. Like, I know a lot of countries are there to receive funding, and also a lot of businesses from different countries. Talk to me about which countries in Africa you see attracting more investments, and help us value, investment commitments made so far.
That's a good question, and data is a good way to answer that question. As we know, there are many instruments that are used for channeling investments into Africa. And allow me to use two data sets to answer that question. One, when you look at the kind of bonds that are being raised in the region for green and social impact objectives, we see that they've increased over time. And so when you look at the flow of that kind of capital to see where it's flowing to, we see that the largest issuer is, in terms of geography, is South Africa, and that's not surprising because they have a very sophisticated market. But following not very closely after that is Nigeria and Mauritius, as well as other markets like Morocco. But that is not to say that other markets are not raising capital as well. As FSD Africa, we've supported two issuances recently in Tanzania that are currently in market, and they're seeking to raise $45 million US. So that's one part of the answer. The second part of the answer, we can look at data on private capital, and this is where capital is raised through investment instruments that are not traded on the exchange. So when we look at the data from last year, we find that most of the capital has been raised and channeled through investment deals in West Africa, 31% of the private capital has been directed towards deals there. And when you look at the actual market, you'll see it's Nigeria. But beyond West Africa, we find that South Africa has been able to attract about 19%, East and Northern Africa 18%. But if you drill further to look at which sectors are receiving these funds, you'll see it's the financial services sector. And then you look at where is the capital coming from, where is it flowing from? It's largely international capital that is flowing through these private deals. And so just to say, in closing, I think for us as FSD Africa, we see the role of capital market development in terms of the entire ecosystem to just enable this capital to flow better from where it is held to where it is needed most so that the economies can grow sustainably.
All right, before I let you go now, would you say Smart Money was impressed with most of the pitches they got, at the event? I know that a lot of investors were there looking for where to stack their money. Were they impressed?
I mean, I would imagine that there are opportunities for every kind of investor. So it depends. I mean, different investors have different kinds of capital. So different kinds of investments that are looking for different kinds of capital. I'm sure this is a great opportunity to match those two. And so I would say, I don't know whether I would say impressed, I wouldn't answer for them, but I want to believe that there's an opportunity for investors and investors and those who need the capital to meet where their interests match.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on show, Mary Njuguna, Principal Specialist, Capital Markets, FSD Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ladi.